I've had this little piggy here sitting in the background of all my episodes for the last, I don't know, few months now, including all of my Overwatch-focused episodes, and I've never actually drawn him. So in today's episode, where I'm taking Overwatch characters and drawing them, designing them, and coming up with stories for them in a Dungeons & Dragons kind of universe, I'm gonna start with Roadhog, as well as, of course, a little friend of his. Let's get right into it. Now, I haven't done tons of team-up shots on this channel. I know I did one in the Anime X-Men episode with the Elric brothers, and one with Hannah and Toki in a previous Overwatch D&D episode, but Junkrat and Roadhog is probably the one I've been by far most excited to do, and I'm really happy with it, and their stories were fun to D&Dify as well. So here's what I got. Years ago, an incredible war had been fought over the Outlands. The battle occurred between three groups. The first was a tribe of barbarian Cyclops that had been on a rampage through several kingdoms. The second was the Shimada Empire during their ongoing expanse to control as much of the world as possible. And the third was the Hog Folk of the Outland. The terrain was undesirable as it was scorching hot and inhabited by many dangerous creatures. The only people who dared to live there were the Hog Folk, as their physiology meant they really enjoyed the heat, and they were pretty much as tough as any creature that might attack them in the Outlands. The Shimada Empire really wanted the Hog Folk on their side, as they were a tough, burly group of warriors. But agreements were not going well, and when the Cyclopses stormed onto the scene around the time the terms of cooperation were being made, it sent the whole event spiraling, and turned into a war between the three groups. The war was wreaking havoc on the already unpleasant land, so the Hog Folk's leader, MAKO, sought out the help of a sorceress who'd been cast into the Outlands for her vile use of black magic. MAKO was desperate and asked what they could give her in exchange for her help. She said for no charge, she could make his people far more powerful in battle and able to take on any opponent. But MAKO would be left out of the spell. Now, MAKO believed this to be the sorceress trying to make a big drawback to her help. After the war, if all of his people were stronger than him, surely one of them would try and take over the rule of the tribe for themselves. But MAKO believed this to be worth the risk and let the sorceress implement the spell on his people. But MAKO soon found this to be a curse far greater than he feared. His people did continue to see him as the leader, and they did become very powerful warriors, but they also became savage and near mindless beasts. They fought like animals, destroying their own village in the battle, and the Cyclopses were fought off, and the Shimada Empire no longer wanted anything to do with the Hog Folk, so they left. But now MAKO was left the leader of a mindless tribe of beasts, and the sorceress had vanished. But soon after, on the scene, appeared a Goblin junker, collecting remnants of armor and weapons from the battlefield, salvaging anything that he thought he could sell for a quick buck. MAKO thought nothing of the Goblin and was still in mourning, but soon after arriving, some of the Hog Folk started attacking the Goblin. In an attempt to hide behind MAKO, he soon realized that as long as he stayed near MAKO, none of the Hog Folk would attack him. So the Junker started following MAKO around and kind of pestering him into telling him what had happened to the other Hog Folk. MAKO eventually told him the story to try and get him off his back, and the Junker realized he might be able to help out his new quote-unquote friend. He knew of a sorceress powerful enough to reverse this curse for the right price. Now, MAKO's people had had no use for conventional money, so he had little to offer, but the Goblins struck a bargain with MAKO. The two of them would commit a series of heists to get enough money for MAKO to pay off the sorceress. Of course, the Goblin would receive half of the earnings, and was eager to have the help of a brooding warrior like MAKO. And with that, a tenuous friendship was created between the two. And this friendship would spawn one of the greatest crime sprees that the world had ever seen. Now, I've loved playing as both of these characters in Overwatch at different times. I think they're both a blast. I love the design of both of them. I feel like I probably could have changed up Roadhog a little bit more from his Overwatch design, but overall, I'm very happy with this. I love Junkrat tossing the bomb over his shoulder. I think it's a lot of fun, and I hope you all enjoy my drawing and story for MAKO and the Junker. Now, Moira is not a character I've been super familiar with because I stopped regularly playing Overwatch before she was introduced, but so many people have requested her to be D&D-ified. I looked into her story and I thought, yeah, there's definitely a lot of fun potential here. And specifically suggested by a subscriber named Jack Dewey, I decided to make her a Tiefling. Thought it was a fun fit for her. And here's the story that I came up with. War was an ideal state for MORIKARA. During peaceful times, few people were actively seeking out ways of improving human combat potential, and fewer still were willing to trust a Tiefling to experiment on them to improve themselves. MORIKARA had faced distrust from the people around her whole life because she was a Tiefling, and many feared her partially satanic background. But that didn't bother her much so long as she could continue her work. She was fascinated by the hidden strength and potential of all the different species of the world. And well, she had performed some spells to heal people, which seemed to be impossible miracle spells. She'd also helped some very violent people push their strength and fighting capabilities with potions and with what some believed to be black magic curses. Of course, her spells were so foreign to anyone in the city of Gibraltar that nobody could prove that she was doing anything illegal. Regardless, MORIKARA had been considering leaving her home of Gibraltar simply because it had become too peaceful for her. That is, until the Shimada Empire invaded. Now, opportunities for her to enact her experiments were popping up on two sides of a brewing conflict. The Shimada Empire had easily taken over Gibraltar, but now there was a small band of very skilled warriors that had popped up, attempting to reclaim the city. Both sides were desperate for any way to destroy their opponent, and both sides had come to MORIKARA for help. Now, she had no allegiance to any one side and was willing to help both so long as she could continue her work. But our budding medieval Overwatch team was only really coming to her for her incredible healing abilities, while the Shimada Empire had specifically come to her with a fascinating experiment in the physical potential of a certain Goliath. But we'll get to him as the last drawing of the episode. As for the drawing of Moira in her D&D form, I had a lot of fun drawing a Tiefling. I'd never really drawn one before. I did one without a tail, although I probably could have worked one in. I tried to make her skinny and very angular as she is in Overwatch. And this idea of having a bunch of books floating around her and her brewing some potions hovering in the air with some magic around them had actually come from a drawing I did of Senku if he was in My Hero Academia. That was like a really short episode that I put out a while back as an experiment. But I liked the idea of a magic user having a bunch of stuff floating around them as they worked. And in general, I think it turned out pretty cool. Not the most dynamic pose, but it was definitely a fun one. So I hope you enjoy MORIKARA, the Opportunist. And now for Warrior King Hanzo, who in this series has kind of become the villain, but now that I'm actually doing a version of him, I wanted to add a little bit of depth to his character, because he's not so explicitly a bad guy in Overwatch, as we've kind of made him out to be in this series so far. So here's what I've got for him. The tyrannical Shimada Empire was on the rise, with Hanzo Shimada as the reigning king. After his father was killed in the overthrow of Gibraltar, the kingship was to be taken by his brother Genji, but Hanzo never accepted this as his brother had no interest in continuing the expanse of the nation as their father had wanted. Blinded by his false sense of obligation to his pretty problematic nation, Hanzo killed his brother. Or so he believed. And he did so in order to take the throne for himself and continue their father's mission. But upon taking the throne, Hanzo started to see all the cracks in their empire's honor. His father's advisors pushed back against every decision he tried to make for the betterment of the people of the Shimada Empire, including their new subjects from Gibraltar. Without him even knowing, the advisors had implemented very strict curfews on the people of Gibraltar, and severely punished anyone who violated that curfew. Hanzo had always believed the Shimada Empire to be powerful, but also just and fair. He'd arrogantly believed that the entire world would be better for having them rule over all. But he was now seeing the hubris of that belief. You see, Hanzo had always seen things from a distance. He'd been on the military side of the family, training most of his days and helping them fight in wars. He never spent much time on the politics side, seeing how the empire was run, and was finally seeing just how cruel his nation had become. He tried for a while to find a middle ground, maintaining a strong rule while trying to change the empire for the better, but the king's advisors pushed him at every turn. Now he's stuck, ruling a nation that he doesn't believe in, afraid of what would happen if he left them unwatched or under a more violent king. Along with that, a small but formidable band of incredible warriors was fighting back in Gibraltar, trying to reclaim it. Upon their first encounter, Hanzo had adamantly fought them off, but then he started to see that maybe they could help him in a way. He could continue to act as though he was fighting them off, but if he played it right, he could find a way to make them kill off his advisors. That would leave him as the true ruler, and he could be the honorable king that he wanted to be for the Shimada Empire. It wouldn't be easy, and he'd have to trick both his enemies and his alleged allies, but if he could pull it off, he could finally lead his people to the bright future that they deserved. Now, once this goes down, will he be willing to relinquish control of Gibraltar back to the people? We'll see. I don't exactly want to turn him all the way back into a full-on hero. I want a little bit of flexibility, a little bit of a desire to still be in control of things. But overall, I'm pretty happy with it, and I can't believe it took this long to get to Hanzo. He's one of my favorite Overwatch characters. He's so cool. Starting to realize from doing this series just how many of the Overwatch characters I really love. Their designs are all so great. In terms of the drawing, this is another one where I feel like I probably could have changed more, but I guess part of the reason I hadn't done Hanzo yet is his design is already kind of Dungeons and Dragons looking, so I just kind of stripped away some of the sci-fi elements, and I also made his arrow kind of magic-y looking to imply that he's got some spellcasting abilities and can make some cool enchanted arrows. Also, I'm realizing now that I forgot his quiver of arrows, but we can just say that it's in behind his back so you wouldn't be able to see it. But besides that, this was a really fun one, and I hope you all enjoy our Warrior King Hanzo. Now, I rarely save the best drawing for last in a video, but Doomfist here might be my favorite character I've drawn in this whole series of Overwatch D&D so far. It's a simpler one, but I don't know, I really liked how it turned out. So here's the story for him. The advisors to King Hanzo were starting to doubt their leader's abilities as a fighter. He'd gone up against the new team of troublesome warriors fighting to reclaim Gibraltar, and had never succeeded in killing or capturing any of them. They were particularly concerned about a rumor circling that one of the heroes was none other than the resurrected Genji, now fighting against his home nation. The advisors needed a fighter who could truly handle this new threat, and luckily for them, sitting in the prisons of Gibraltar, put there before the Shimada Empire had taken over, was a fearsome Goliath warrior, perfect for this mission. Akande had been the son of a proud tribe of Goliaths. They'd lived up in the mountains far from any city-dwelling civilization, but Akande spent his younger years incredibly curious and desiring to explore beyond his family's slopes. One day, explorers happened upon his tribe and were fascinated by the Goliaths, who very few had ever seen in person. Akande became friends with the humans and decided to leave his family to return to Gibraltar with these explorers. He became enthralled with the city life and spent his days competing in any physical challenge that the city could provide. He trained as a knight, competed in wrestling matches, gladiator fights, anything to challenge his strength and fighting capabilities. But he'd pushed this need for challenge farther and farther until, eventually, he was bet that he couldn't defeat a full squad of Queensguard warriors on his own. With a bit of ale in him and an overwhelming air of confidence, he took the bet. He picked a fight with the guards, and at first they tried to urge him off and shoo him away. But when he drew his greatsword on one of them, they took him a little more seriously. They fought back properly and fought, and the battle got worse and worse, and Akande was faring far better than a single man should have against a full group of highly trained guards. Fearing a potential death count, the fight only ended when one of the Queen's guards lopped off Akande's sword-wielding arm. They threw him in prison, and soon after that, the Shimada Empire took over. Now, stewing in his cell, the new king's advisors offered him a deal. Not only would they have a certain work-obsessed Tiefling build him a new, incredible enchanted arm made from warforged armor, but they'd give him the challenge of a lifetime. If he could rid them of the powerful warriors attempting to reclaim Gibraltar, he'd earn his freedom as well as a place as a high-ranking warrior for the Shimada Empire, able to fight for them on the front lines of some incredible battles. He took this challenge as he had all others, and sought to destroy our new, budding medieval Overwatch team. So now that I'm making Hanzo a little bit more on the good-ish side, felt like it would be kind of fun to give us a new full-on villain with this Goliath fist character. In terms of drawing him, I tried to make his new arm a little bit more Warforged inspired, but still made it gold like it is in Overwatch. I also gave him a nice big greatsword in his backhand, but mostly wanted us focusing on the front hand and up and around that face with a nice big battle-ready expression. It was a blast to draw. I'm so happy with how this one turned out. So let's take a look at the final version of the Goliath fist. I think this Overwatch Characters and Dungeons & Dragons series is the one where I can best chart my progression as an artist over the last few months, which is kind of cool, and I absolutely love how all the characters turned out in this episode. If you haven't seen the other episodes, I'll link a playlist to them. There's 4 of them now. I've done most of the big characters now, but let me know who you'd want to see if we do a round 5. And if you're not already, make sure you're subscribed and got the bell rung, and check out a bunch of my other kinds of videos like this. I've put Spider-Man villains in the Star Wars universe, Venomized My Hero Academia characters, turned Ben 10 characters into a bunch of different stuff, and even put Batman villains in Dungeons & Dragons. But anyway, I'm Christian Pearson, this has been PopCross Studios, home of the nerdiest art videos on YouTube, and I will see you all in the next one. Goodbye everybody, and thanks for watching.